morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. I'm Amber Duke, joined by Niall Stanage.
Hello, Amber. Our first time in the fancy new set with the big, beautiful bowl and all of that.
We love potpourri.
We do.
All right. President Trump is threatening to sue the Wall Street Journal over a story they published last night.
The story is titled, Jeffrey Epstein's Friends Sent Him Bawdy Letters for a 50th Birthday Album. One was from Donald Trump. The Journal reports the letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. The alleged picture the Journal says it reviewed has a signature on it that reads, Donald. The alleged letter ends with, Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret.
President Trump blasted the Journal in a Truth Social post, writing in part, the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch personally were warned directly by President Donald J. Trump that the supposed letter they printed by President Trump to Epstein was a fake, and if they print it, they will be sued. Trump then said the Journal was told the letter was fake, but went ahead and published what Trump called a false, malicious, and defamatory story. He continues, President Trump has already beaten George Stephanopoulos/ABC, 60 Minutes/CBS, and others, and looks forward to suing and holding accountable the once great Wall Street Journal. It has truly turned out to be a disgusting and filthy rag, and writing defamatory lies like this shows their desperation to remain relevant. Seemingly fed up with the entire Epstein files situation, Trump also announced on Truth Social last night, quote, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam, perpetuated by the Democrats, should end right now.
So I'm interested for a start in hearing your views on all this, because it's one of these rare Trump controversies that obviously has roiled and divided people on the conservative side somewhat. One thing that strikes me just looking at the thing writ large is I think Trump has actually handled it very badly, and I think that's quite unusual because for all that I or others would criticize his policies, he normally has quite well-tuned political antennae. And I would say that in this one, for a start, the Pam Bondi now infamous quote about the client list being on her desk to be reviewed, that was bad for a start. But then Trump has at times blamed his supporters, at other times said, well, why do people care about Epstein anyway? And we're talking about a guy who's just a gross individual and a terrible predator. And then now with the Wall Street Journal, I think that he's honestly playing into his opponent's hands in a way, because we know that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein knew each other at this time. There's a very notable quote from the year prior to this birthday card from a New York magazine profile where Trump praises Epstein as a terrific guy. So he could simply say, well, this thing was part of a birthday album I was asked to put together. I then broke off contact with him. There we are. Now he's making it this massive thing. We'll see if he follows through with the threat to sue. We'll see if the Wall Street Journal countersues seeking discovery. But it seems to me just badly handled by Trump generally.
So I'll start with his general handling of the Epstein files and then get into the Wall Street Journal story, which I agree that the general handling of the Epstein files was done poorly by the administration because of Pam Bondi's insistence that there was a client list, but also this phase one binder with the influencers, which I believe we talked about shortly after it happened. And then Trump also saying that the people who care about it are his past supporters, insinuating, the White House insinuating repeatedly through background sources that this is a small handful of online influencers who make money off of caring about Epstein and not anyone who actually lives in the real world. I've heard from people who live in the real world who are not happy about this and are quite disturbed at what they view as a cover-up, frankly, of the Epstein files. But I actually think the Wall Street Journal story helped Trump in a lot of ways. I see a lot of his supporters now circling the wagons, saying that they don't believe that this letter is real. One of the things that they've been pointing to is the use of the word enigma, which apparently Trump has never used publicly in his entire life. And just the fact that it was typed out instead of handwritten, which Trump loves his handwritten notes. But I think it's sort of immaterial whether or not the letter is real. This story was really hyped up a lot There was a report by Will Sommer shortly before it came out that there was this major bombshell coming, that Trump had called the Wall Street Journal editor trying to get them to kill the story. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they found something connecting him to Epstein after he was accused of these sex crimes. And then when I first read the story, I saw that the date was 2003, and I thought, okay, well, already not super bombshell. We know that they were friends. And then it's a birthday letter that Maxwell was apparently collecting for his 50th birthday. So it wasn't this huge thing that I thought it was going to be. And then I think, his supporters kind of viewed this as him being the victim once again. So whereas he was the person taking a heavy part of the blame along with Pam Bondi for the failure to release the Epstein files, the Wall Street Journal story comes out, which people view as somewhat spurious, and they view this as more media bias against their president. And then he turns around, full circle moment, and says, actually, I am going to release the grand jury testimony and documents related to Epstein. So somehow we've gone from, we're not releasing it anymore, there's nothing to see here, my supporters are losing their minds over this and I don't know why, to supposed hit piece followed by, okay, fine, I'm going to release it now.
So there are some parts of what you just said that I do agree with, but I think where we differ, at least in our interpretation of it, is this idea that Trump is now cast as the victim of the Wall Street Journal. I see his reaction as being incongruent with that, because, as you say, the central substance of the Wall Street Journal story was not really that shocking. And his reaction, to me, suggests someone seeking to intimidate media outlets out of further inquiring into his relationship with Epstein. Because if all the Journal had was this letter, I think I'm less skeptical of its authenticity than you are, but we'll see what comes out in that respect. But if that's all they had, then let that be a swing and a miss, as it were. Trump, by saying what he's saying and talking about not only speaking with the editor of the Wall Street Journal, but pressuring Murdoch to not run it, that implies to me that it is the sending of a signal to stop covering his relationship with Epstein. And therefore, I think, well, what else is there? What's he really trying to cover up?
I think what he was doing was trying to rally his supporters to attack the Wall Street Journal on his behalf. And I think there's an argument to be made that if he had stayed silent, then it would have implied that this letter was real, that he was close to Epstein in some way, and maybe him being so aggressive sends a signal that the letter's not real. Vice President J.D. Vance has said that as well. I do think, I'm sort of divided on whether or not the letter is real, but I do think that the Wall Street Journal, if they had access to this book, probably should have printed the letter. They should have had a picture of it or a screenshot or something of that nature so that people could see it for themselves. I think it was strange that they did this big expose and didn't actually show what the letter looked like. And then I would have expected them to share other letters, perhaps, that were gathered in this book as well from other powerful people. They mentioned the Les Wexner one, for example, and those were notably.
Was in there as well.
Who was?
Dershowitz was in there.
That's right, and so I think that would have been useful for people to kind of evaluate, just looking at it. Does this look like Trump's signature? Does it look like something he would have written? That would have been, I think, a smart move from the Wall Street Journal in order to help prove its authenticity.
Yeah, I actually do. We find a point of agreement on that, although we'll see how it goes in the coming days, because I wonder, does the Journal have more information? Will it produce that kind of thing? Will it be able to push back hard in that way on Trump's arguments? But we shall see. Meanwhile, some disturbing reports coming out of the so-called alligator Alcatraz, the conditions detainees are describing, coming up next on Rising.